During the Victorian era, homelessness was a major challenge throughout England. To highlight the misery of homelessness during the Victorian age, the issuance by policemen of casual ward certifications in London rose from 200,000 in the year 1864 to over 400,000 just 5 years later. The rapid advances of the Industrial Revolution meant thousands of jobless workers moved into larger urban centers in search of employment. With resources in major towns and cities already strained, many could find no employment or housing. As a result, street life during this period exploded in numbers. It was a horrific existence, with very little help for destitute people at the time. Being homeless while begging for food and shelter in Victorian times would be the worst situation one could find themselves, since your chances for long-term survival would be very slim. Depending on the season, destitute people could die in the freezing chills of winter or during the heavy rains of spring and autumn from exposure. With threadbare clothes hanging off your frail body, unwashed for months at a time, you were constantly reminded of your precarious existence. Often suffering from some form of illness, physical affliction, and lice, you would be living in absolute misery every waking day. If you were fortunate enough to obtain a few coins from constant begging, you could purchase a night or two in a basic shelter to escape the perils of your meager existence. These miserable places provided a refuge from the aching despair and danger of street life at night. The following are types of accommodations available for homeless people that could afford admittance fees on any particular evening. A penny sit-up was one kind of shelter the Salvation Army operated to assist destitute people. For the fee of 1 penny, it provided the cheapest escape from street life at night. However, it often smelled of deep stench, were of poor cleanliness, and filled one's ears with all manners of foul language and bitter remarks. After paying the admittance fee, one sat on a low bench in a dimly lit large hall which was open all night. However, you were not allowed to sleep on the benches, which were constantly monitored to enforce this strict rule. For those homeless that could afford it, a 2-penny hangover had some positive differences over a penny sit-up. The fee of 2 pennies allowed you to sit on a bench in a row with one strong rope strung from wall to wall in front of you. This allowed patrons to lean over and sleep without falling off the bench and hitting their head on the ground below. In the morning, this rope would be unhung or cut, alerting guests to vacate the premises and return to the daily misery of Victorian street life. An upgraded accommodation available for the homeless was a tight-fitting wooden box for sleeping inside a shelter. Known as a 4-penny coffin due to its shape, it enabled a night's rest while lying down. Though in the morning the pains of sleeping in a hard confining space would be all too apparent, along with the various forms of pestilence contained within these coffin boxes. Some food and tea would also be provided, along with a tarpaulin sheet for covering your fatigued body. The Salvation Army also offered bed accommodations, though the high fee was well beyond the means of most homeless. With an admission price of 4 pence, a common lodging house would also be an option for Victorian-era homeless, if it could be afforded, though public benches in parks and squares were prime locations for street wanderers without any money. Next in terms of favored positions would be shelter provided under shop doorway awnings. Even stairwells of private homes and industrial buildings would be occupied by destitute people. Any of these locations were quickly filled if another street wanderer vacated their position. However, unlike paid indoor shelter, there was always the constant threat of being moved on by the police. There was another choice for the numerous homeless and destitute seeking refuge in Victorian London, especially on chilling winter evenings. The asylum, funded by public charity and alms, offered stale bread and shelter for street wanderers. Straw beds were arranged in rows for nighttime rest, with basic medical care also available. In turn, patrons would perform basic tasks like needlework or selling firewood to help the asylum meet its expenses. The type of shelter available to a Victorian homeless person on any given night depended on their success seeking coins and charity that day. Nevertheless, even with the enlightened assistance of wealthy Victorians and missions like the Salvation Army, many of the growing numbers of homeless faced a desperate existence. In addition, troubles for the Victorian homeless did not end when they were able to afford an evening stay at shelter. Thieves, pickpockets, drunks, criminals, and other potentially dangerous people would be sharing the same space with you. In other words, the horrific experience of homelessness was a constant, unending threat. Though Victorian shelters were considered better options than the harsher conditions of workhouses or staying out in the open while sleeping rough and exposed. Today, homelessness is a persistent and complex issue facing communities and nations around the world. Most people think of homelessness as a modern-day challenge that has only become a major issue in the last few decades. Though it is almost unimaginable to think of living a precarious existence among the rampant homeless population during the Victorian era, when just surviving on a daily basis was a life or death struggle. Thank you for watching this episode of the Victorian Diary. We show regular episodes which reveal life in the Victorian age, so please remember to like, subscribe, share, and reveal this knowledge of Victorian times for the benefit of everyone.